The recording is started.
Okay. My name is Nikita. I hope everyone who is here attended my previous lecture, which was the JS functions part 1. Yep. Last time we discussed how to declare function, how to call it, and talk a bit about function parameters. Today, in the second part of our function course, we're gonna discuss such things as this keyword, function scope, and closures in JavaScript and how they work. But before we start to discuss this new stuff, I wanna share one additional way of defining a function. I forgot to tell it last time, and there is one question about it in my questionnaire. It's called function constructor. So you define a function. Okay, it's a presentation, but most of the time we will be live coding. I will share my screen now. Can you see it? Guys, no, some reaction, please. Okay, fine. So define a function with function constructor real quick. You start with defining a new variable, like let it be new function. Then you type new special word function, and here first you type parameters divided parameter 1, parameter 2. It will be function with 2 parameters, and a sort value, it's also a string, will be our return statement. We return parameter 1 plus parameter 2. So that's it. It's not the way you will often use in practice, but it's nice to know it in an educational way to understand more how JavaScript works. Is it fine? Do you have any questions on this one, or we can proceed? Guys? Okay, I will continue. So, yeah. Now I would like to discuss with you what is this keyword in JavaScript. Basically, the value, please mute guys. The value of these keywords depends from where was it called. Let me give you an example. If you call this in a browser like this, the return value will be a window object. And if you call it, for example, let me give you an example. We'll define a function. It will be function expression. Like this. It will return us this value. Again, if we call this here on the top level, we will get a window object. But if we define some object, let it have some values inside, like name. Now it will be blank values. Name, surname. If we declare an method inside of object like this, object, let it be object, because object itself is declared name. Oh, wait a minute, please. I wanted to discuss this stuff later. So we define the same method inside of object. It will be a function. In this case, this value will return us the object itself, because get this method, it's defined inside of object. So if we return this on the sublevel, if we perform this operation in a browser, we will get a window, global window object. If we run function which return this function which belongs to the object, it will return us this object. Guys, is it clear to you? Show some reaction, please.
Yep.
Fine. Yeah, I forgot console log again. So here it is. You can see it. The output of our let's move it up a bit. You see it, right? This object we have get this function which return this, and in this case it's the object in which this function was declared. And here's a little statement. This value is determined by how a function is called. It's called runtime binding. And by default, this is says from where did you call it. But in JavaScript we have ways to redefine this or control the value of this. And now I will show you how to do it. We can do it with methods. Every function has these methods: call, bind, and apply. Let me give you an example. We will have two objects. Both of them will have name and surname fields, and one object will have, for example, name Alex. Just name is enough without surname. And object 2, his name John. Yep. Also, we have a name variable declared on the top. That decrease. And we define a function which returns a name. It will be function const GetName equals function without parameters. It will return as a name. Now, guys, I want to guess, which value will we get if I run this program. What name will we get? What name will our GetName function return to us? This.name. Please say it verbally or write your variants in chat. To function with the same name in current situation. You're right. Yeah, we can't. And here's a syntax highlight. Yeah, thank you. Good. I'm glad you noticed. So I want to guess now what value will GetName return in this case. We talked about this a little bit before. We have a function which returns this.name. What value will we get? Guys, your turn. I'll wait. Yeah, it would be Chris. And do you know why? Will be Chris because GetName is defined on the top level. Here is the result. Okay. Yeah, that's because we used const. It's Chris now. Yeah, but there are ways of redefining the context of execution of the function. For example, let object1 have a new field. It will be a function, and the function will be get object1 name, and it equals GetName. So now object1 have a new field. It's a function. Let's call it function. In this case, we will get a new name. It will be the name inside of object1, and it will be Alex.
Missing console log, I guess.
Yeah, of course. I'm also missing this. That's my problem. Yeah, it's Alex, and if you declare get object2 name inside of object2, you will have a new name. It will be John. It's the variable name inside of this object. There is a type error, so now it should work. No. Okay, let me check. Object2 gets object2 name. Object2 gets object2 name. Yeah, it's done. Okay, can I move forward to call bind and apply? Guys, show some direction. Okay. Okay, and this is like the most simple way to redefine the function context, like just define a new field in the object, and you'll get this object's variable, return variable. Okay, we move forward to the methods call. We call GetName dot call, because this is a method which belongs to the function, and inside of call parentheses we type a new context, like as we saw before. If we call GetName just like this, we'll get this name Chris on the sub level. To get another name, we define object1. In this case, we will get name from object1, which is Alex. And of course, this time I won't forget it. Cancel lock. And we get Alex. Call object2, and we get John. Yeah, fine. It works fine. So this is the main goal of this group of methods, call bind and apply, to redefine context of execution of function. Is it clear to you? May explain bind and apply, or do you need some more explanations on call, or maybe you have some other questions?
If that function would be a part of an object, would you be able to call it for another object?
So let's try. So do you mean we have function with the same name in one object in another? Yeah.
No, like you would have the function in an object 1.
Yeah.
Would you be able to call it with an object 2 then? Or it only works if the function is on the top level?
I think it would work. So I didn't check it like practically, but I think it will work. So let's have an experiment here and like change the context of execution of object 1's function. Yeah. So it will basically do the same. It will return us this name value. Yeah, and here we lock object 1 func. We in the call, and then we change context of execution to 2. Let's see. Yeah, it's John again. So it works on every function. You just take this function and change context of execution with call. And if in our case, function doesn't have any parameters, yeah, that's why there is only a new context value here. But if function has any parameters, you just type in divided by a sign. For example, now we have a function, object1func has a function with one parameter name. And if we have any parameters in the function, we must provide new context as first parameter and the parameter of the function as a second parameter of call methods. So that's name. And it's Chris this time. Okay. So guys, any questions? Can I move forward? Guys, any reaction?
Can you hide Teams Microsoft notification? It's covering the output.
Yeah. Guys, any questions on call methods? We'll go further, right? Next methods for changing context of execution is bind methods. And actually, it's do the same. So you call a function dot bind keyword, then open these round braces, pass in the new context, which is object1. And the only difference between call and bind is the way you pass the parameters of the function. So in the call, you pass parameters of the function divided by comma, like this. Parameter again, parameter 2, and so on. It's in a call. In a bind, you pass them as an array. So bind method has two parameters. First one is a new context, and the second one is array of function parameters. This is what unites call and bind methods. They call the function, they execute the function right now at the same time. The difference between call and bind, call, oh, sorry, I missed the name. It was apply. this guy, check, call and apply, executes function, but bind methods. The difference between call and apply and bind is bind method doesn't execute the function. It creates a new function with the different context. Let me give you an example. So the example of using bind keyword. We define a new function which will be call Alex. We suppose it will return Alex name. We already have a function GetName, which returns us this.name, and so we use this function to get Alex. We bind and we pass object1, object which contains Alex as a parameter to bind. So here we created a function called Alex, but we didn't execute it yet. Let's do it. Console.log. Call Alex. Alex. Guys, is it clear to you of this stuff with changing context of execution, bind, call, and apply methods? Do you have some questions? Show some reaction to me. Fine. So I made a mistake when I was explaining you call, bind, and apply. I want to make sure you understand it well. So let's summarize. Call, apply, calls function with changed context. Bind creates a new function. If it's clear to you, please show some reaction, and we will go further to the function scope. Okay, let's continue. Next. Function scope. Okay, scope, function scope in JavaScript is a term that which declare the visibility of our variables. We'll continue with our example with names. There are two types of scope, the global scope and the local one. Here is the name, which is declared, a variable declared in the top level, and it belongs to the global scope, which means that every object, every function in our JS code will have access to it. So it's a function called bill. It will return us name. So you see that there is no name variables inside of this function, but this function has access to the global scope. Bill name was declared in global scope. That's why if we do call bill, we will get bill string. But in JavaScript, when we declare function, we declare a new scope. So defining, let me rename it to be clear. So what function in fact does, will return name. Inside of GetName function, we declare new name variable, not in the global scope like this name, but in the local scope. Call GetName here. Lock the output. And get queries. And here is the thing. When we return a name inside, when we return the name, first it will look in the local scope of the function. And then if we don't find name variable in the local scope, we continue searching on the top level, which in our case is the global scope. So here we get bill. Guys, is it clear to you? Fine. And the basic recommendation is not to declare global variables on the top level until you need to, because there are several security problems. So you can create a variable which will override some existing variables, and you will get unexpected result in your methods. And the second point is when you declare a global variable, it gets accessible in every function in our code, in our application, and it's very it's a bad practice to do so. Until there is no other way, you use local scope of function to declare variables. Okay, so you would declare some function, and inside this function or inside some object, you declare your fields, your variables, data you need. So with every object and with every function created, you create a new local scope, and this way you protect your variables from getting used by other function methods, so you can control your data. And here we get to the closure. This is an important term in JavaScript. And as before, let me give you an example for you to understand it. If you start looking for the closure term in internet, what you get is closure is a function itself plus its lexical environment. Does it give you any information? Do you understand it, or it's better to provide an example? Okay, of course. Of course. So we will declare a new function which we'll call closure function. Inside of this function, we'll have a variable. Let's continue with our example. Let's define a name. Let's use some different name, like we don't have. I guess Sam would be a nice choice. And inside of this function, we define another function. So we define closure function. It creates a local scope inside of which we have a name, which is a string, and GetName, which is a function. And as a result of this function, we will return value. We will return GetName function. So what important? We do not return the name, which is Sam. We return the function itself. It's not the result of execution of the function, but the function itself. Outside on the global scope, we define a new function. What is his name? Okay, it's a new function defined, new variable. It's not yet a function, but I want it to be a function. So I make the function what is his name equal to the GetName function of closure function. So it's a nested function, the function inside the function, but that's okay. Guys, it's okay? Is it okay? Do you need some explanations or we go further? Yes, Geramantis is right. So maybe you don't understand it from the first time, but I tried to make it as simple as I can. So give you understanding about closures in a nutshell. So you understand a bit, but you do your own research further, like find some more examples of this. So, okay, I didn't receive any reaction. So we have what is his name function, which will we execute right now. We console log. And here we get Sam. It's our name defined inside of closure function. So you see that the function what is his name itself doesn't have access to the name variable because what is his name is declared in the global scope. Name belongs to the local scope of closure function. Local function, but returning GetName function, we create a closure. So it's, as I said, determined before, closure is a function itself. Here is it, the function itself, plus its lexical environment. And lexical environment, it's all the values our function has access to. Guys, is it clear to you? And that's why when defining function, what is his name, closure works. And when calling what is his name, we get name Sam. Any questions? Yeah, guys, don't be shy. It's really complex and not easy to understand, but it's better to ask questions you find stupid, but in fact there are no stupid questions, than to just mute yourself and say nothing. So I'd like to receive some feedback. Why not just return name? Okay, do you hear me? Something went wrong with my connection.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, sure. So there are plenty of examples of how can we use it. Basically, it's there are plenty of examples when you use it, but you don't know it's a closure. For example, in my case, I used some example of this, and then when I started to read more literature, I understood that I was using closures. So all of these topics I was talking about today, like this, scope of function, closure, are connected together, and it's important to write modern and safe JavaScript programs. Why not return the name itself? Like this is just a simple example of closure, and our goal wasn't not just to return name. In this case, we could just write name here, write function GetName, and run this function. The goal of this code, not to return name, but to show you how closure works. Generally, it's need to isolate your variables to protect it from getting used by other functions and to keep it safe. Yeah. Do we have private in JavaScript? So guys, any more questions? Some feedback?
Could you demonstrate a simple example with private variables, like making a closure with a private counter and which exposes public methods like increment and decrement? So you just demonstrate the usage for closures.
Yeah, of course.
Because this example is pretty simple, but I don't think people understand the reason you did this.
The reason, of course, of course. So there is a classic example when we have a counter method which will change the value of our variable. So we have variable counter, let it be 0. Private, okay. And we have increased counter of methods. Germantus, could you please remind me like the implementation details of this counter? So there is a variable. Like,
Sure.
yeah,
No.
variable.
You should start from creating. Let's say, can I use your screen? I think you can allow me control. No. I mean, wait. Let me request control. Can we do that? We can't. Sure. I guess I can share my screen temporarily.
Yeah, of course. I'll give access to Germantus.
Just a moment. Oh, there it is. Okay, so JS Fiddle. I wrote up something. I didn't really test it yet, but I think this works already. Let me just see. There's the console. Oh, wait. Let me just set it up first, and I'll explain it. Okay, this is a bad example. I'm gonna just implement it myself. So let's make ourselves the wrapper. We have a private property called count. Let's just call it 0. Then we turn let's see if this works, and then I'll comment. Okay, so now it works. Sorry, I was not talking because I was not prepared for this. So I was thinking a lot. So okay, so now I can explain. First of all, we create a function, which is our closure. As Nikita mentioned, this is, I don't know how to say it a bit easier so you understand, but this basically houses a lexical scope, which is what you see here. And as Nikita mentioned before, this function will look for the count variable. And since it doesn't have a count variable declared inside of it, like this, In this case, it will use this variable, but since it doesn't have it, it will look for the count variable one scope up, as I like to say, so outside of its scope. So it's gonna look for it in the count wrapper function, which it will find, right? It's right here. But since this function only returns the other function, we don't know anything about count. I mean, we can't access it like this. We can't change it like this. This will throw an error, I think. Yeah, set property count of undefined, because there is no count. Because this inst variable is now the function, right? So one use case for this is basically we just created an object with a private variable count, because we can't access it, but we can with methods. I mean, I could add more methods, but I don't think you guys will understand it, because you just started learning functions, so I don't think we should get into some complex things. But I hope you can see now that there are use cases for closures, and it's pretty common. So if you have any questions for this one, just let me know, because I didn't prepare for this, so it's pretty on the fly. So maybe it's not really clear for you. Oh, yeah, font bigger. Sorry, I'll zoom it in a bit.
I may also like provide example of like wrong counter when we have like count defined on the global scope, and so why we like it will answer the previous question, why not just return the name? Like guys,
Yeah,
if we define like let count variable on the global scope, we will also provide a function increment which will change the value of this global count variable, but it may be changed not also via this with counter method. Every method in our application may change it. We may type count ++, which will also increment count and will change the value of this variable. So if we don't use closure, count variable is accessible to any method in our application. We can change it from anywhere, and the output of our counter method becomes unpredictable, because we don't know how many times it was called before, what is this state now. That's why we should use count wrapper disclosure to isolate our count variable. In fact, we defined a new variable const inst, which is the result of count wrapper function, and it have count equals to 0 itself inside of it. But we may define other variable, for example, inst2 equals count wrapper, which will have the same lexical environment, but we will have another count itself. Like when we call count wrapper, each time we defined a new local scope with a new count variable, which is 0 by defined inside. Does it make sense?
Well, I don't see any reactions.
Yeah, it's really complex, guys. So
yeah, I think we shouldn't really elaborate on this topic, because I just want you guys to read through closures on your own pace, because this is pretty complex. I agree, and it's actually pretty hard to explain it as well. But I have one question for you guys. I added a new variable count, the same as here, which affects with the increment function. I mean, it adds 1, as we saw before. So I have one question for you guys. Since we're not going to change anything, we are going to call inst 2 times. So I want you to think, what will count be equal to? You can feel free to type your answers in the chat. Zero, zero, zero. One. Okay, so I will wait 10 more seconds and tell the answer. Okay, so everyone who said 0 is correct. So why is it not 1? Because, as I mentioned before, if we call inst, we are declaring its private scope. Well, it's not really called private scope, but it's its own scope. So whenever increment is called, it looks for count inside its scope, which it cannot find because there is no count defined in the function. Then it looks one level higher, and then it finds count. That means that this global count is no longer affected because the function found count one level higher. So that means this count is not being affected by the two calls. So we can just prove it right now, just 0. These two are right here, so they are console logging this count, not this count. So yeah, I'm not expecting you to understand it all at the beginning. So as I said, you should definitely read after the lecture at your own pace. And MDN has a very in-depth guide on it. So feel free to read it after the lecture. I'm giving you back the screen now, Nikita.
Thank you for help. So guys, here today we discussed this function scope, call by and apply methods, and function and closures in JavaScript. Yeah. So make your own research. You can use the same resources as I mentioned last lecture. It's MDN Web Docs, w3schools.com, and also there are a lot of useful articles and medium.com. So for example, you can see my screen. I type medium, disclosure, and you get some alternative information like not just documentation, but articles written by other people, which have their own methodics of explanation. And sometimes I find non-official documentation more informative than I found on mdn.com, for example. Is it clear, guys? Any questions? Okay, I guess we can finish.
I just want to say one more thing, and I hope Anna will help me out, because your next tasks will be with JavaScript. I don't know if you noticed it, but it's already added to the RS School app. It's the Code Wars challenge, so I'll share my screen a bit, just a short introduction. So basically, codewars.com. Let me just paste it. You will need to register right here. So again, I didn't prepare for this, so I'm just going to do it on the fly. So Hannah, if you may step in if I'm doing something wrong. So first of all, you will need to just push sign up and select the language you're going to use. So we're going to choose JavaScript, of course. So basically, to register, you need to pass a simple test. And I think you are pretty much ready to solve this. So if someone can help me solve this in the chat. I hope you can see it. Oh, I can zoom it in a bit. Okay, Mikhail is correct. We just add return, submit. Hey, that's good. So then you just register. I think I have an account already. So yeah, it's already there. So I'll just log in. This will be the screen you see when you register. And that's basically it. I think the task here is, yeah, you will see the tasks right here. So basically just select a task. You get the details. Wait, I think it's a bit too much. Yeah, so basically you get a task right here, complete the solution, you get this, and then you just press train right here. You do the task. I'm not gonna do it since I want you to do it yourself. It's pretty easy. So basically you do it here, then you do test, you pass all the tests, and then you push attempt right here. It's gonna fail now, but yeah, because all of the tests fail. But after you're done, you just push attempt, and that's it. You do the tasks, and then you go to auto test again. You select Code Wars account username. You push submit, and that's it. And it automatically checks for your tasks, and that will be it. I think there's 50 points for this, and there's part 2 with a bit more complex tasks, Code Wars Basic 2. So, Hanna, did I tell everything correctly? Because I'm not sure myself.
Absolutely.
Oh, okay, cool. So yeah, that's basically all there is. And I would like to remind you to complete your JS tests because the activity is pretty low for it for some reason, and today is the deadline. So yeah, that's all from me. So yeah.
I guess that's it. We can finish. Thank you very
Yeah, I
much.
think except if someone has any questions.
Yeah, but guys, any questions? You have last attempt. 3, 2, 1. And yeah, time is over. Thank you very much for